We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to donate to this college football rebel outpost. If you want to donate to this home for the college football sickos with a donation to help us keep the lights on, hit that $sign where you make a comment, and I'll get to super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls. Now, we do have a dock station failure. It is failing. It is, so I don't know. Hopefully we can do this for 2 hours. Maybe even 3 hours. Maybe we're only going to have 30 minutes. I don't know. I've got a part coming to the studio Sunday, tomorrow. So when we get that new dock station, I will put it in. But this is how it usually goes. We have mic issues, we have camera issues, and then everything collapses. So hopefully we can be on the air for at least 2 hours because we got a lot to talk about. Even though our equipment is starting to rot from the inside, even though I'm not going to get the new part until tomorrow, I decided today was a very good day. We're going to risk it all. We are going to risk it all, and we are going to go into the Holy Smokes Theater. 95% of this show today is going to be in the Holy Smokes Theater. We are going to start the monologue. We are going to continue our Spotlight series, and we are going to be covering the Indiana Hoosiers. The Indiana Hoosiers, who in my official Big Ten prediction coming up in early August, I'm going to have Indiana finishing 4th, 5th, maybe 6th, but probably 4 or 5. I think Indiana is going to be more talented this year than they were last year. They have a little bit more of a more difficult of a schedule, or at least we believe it is. Last year's Big Ten schedule had Washington and Michigan. In the previous year, both of those teams went into the national title game, but they both took a step back last year. So you really don't know, do you, how strength the schedule you're going to have going into the season. But I think Indiana's schedule is going to be a little bit more difficult. I think they're on the bubble to make the playoffs once again, along with Illinois. They've got a lot of talent, and we are going to talk about it here at Peek Around the Corner. But 95% of this show today, we are going to go into the Holy Smokes Theater. There was, during the live show yesterday, Edward the Auburn Tiger, a PATC family member, gave us the heads up on Scott Hamilton, sports reporter, columnist. He was on the Paul Feinbaum show, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, we're going to go through a little report of it, so we'll get the exact words, but I'm paraphrasing. He believes that North Carolina, telling Paul Feinbaum and his audience, he believes that North Carolina has a handshake deal with the Southeastern Conference. And then he mentioned Virginia being directed, going towards the Big Ten. He talked about Clemson and Florida State battling it out for that number 2 spot on the Southeastern Conference slate. Now, Is the camera going bad already? Is the camera already going bad? No, I'm fine. Okay, don't make jokes here. We're on the edge. Hopefully, okay, all right. No jokes. Now, you can joke about me, whatever, but don't joke about the equipment. We are on the edge here. You can see me, you can hear me. Okay, we're going to get a new dock station tomorrow. So everybody relax. I'm not even going to go on a rant today. I'm not going to go on one of my rants because I don't want to blow out any fuses. Okay, everybody relax. Good. That's the best news we're going to have all day. Yes, Greg, unfortunately, we can see you. Okay. Where was I? I don't remember where I was. Oh, it was Scott Hamilton. Okay. So, I'm gonna, now after that article, or after that report, after what he said with Paul Feinbaum, I read the article on it, and You got to be, you got to keep your curiosity up when it comes to this stuff. I made the phone calls, I poked and prodded, and I got to tell you, I'm going to have a slightly different position. I disagree with Scott Hamilton. It doesn't mean I'm throwing him under the bus. It doesn't mean I think he's completely wrong. I have a different take. From the millions of conversations I have fortunately been having over the last many, many, many years, I have a different take. And I'm going to give you where we believe things stand. However, I'm going to caution everybody. I have been repeating the same line over and over and over again, and it is not a cop-out. It just happens to be the truth. Things are active, and you've got a good hint of that in the last 3 or 4 days, right? Things are active. People are not being quiet. I said we were going to start hearing things about reports on this after the NCAA House settlement happened. Now this is just the beginning of reports mixed with speculation, mixed with steam, mixed with hot bubble of action. We are going to get more and more of this in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Okay. So I'm going to have a different take than Mr. Hamilton. It doesn't mean that he's wrong. It doesn't mean I'm right. But this is what this show is for. And every wave of realignment is different from each other. But they all hold the same tent poles. They all have the same core to them. One is relationships matter. Another big one is the biggest domino has to fall first, then the other ones will fall after. And I'm going to add this one in there. There is no such thing, again, I'm politely disagreeing. That's all we're doing here. It's all that I'm doing. I'm not throwing anybody. I got to tell you guys what I believe to know. There is no handshake deals. There is no such thing as handshake deals. It doesn't exist. It's like you're partially pregnant. So there is a lot of stuff going on. A lot of cloak and dagger. A lot of people are talking. Now, people are talking, and you get this information, you get that information, you try to put the pieces together, and that is what Scott Hamilton basically said. Doesn't have all the information. It needs more vetting. It needs more reporting. He said it. I believe that people mistake. They hear something and they say, well, they got an agreement. Of course, it's not official, so it's a handshake agreement. It's not a handshake agreement. What I would call it positioning. These schools are positioning themselves. These conferences are positioning themselves. They're gaming this out. North Carolina knows exactly where they stand. They know exactly where they are positioned at the center of the stage. They know exactly where they are positioned. And they've known this for quite a while. As we reported it June 15th of 2024. And we started reporting about North Carolina 2.5 years ago. Before Kevin Gusowich left Chapel Hill and went to Michigan State, went to East Lansing, we talked about here, live show after live show, I talked about the rock fight that was going on in Chapel Hill for the soul of the university. Now, in the chat room, a common theme in the chat room during those times is, why are you spending so much time talking about this? And I had to say, look, it's going to become important. It is going to become important. North Carolina is starting to lean SEC. People with Southeastern Conference interest have moved in. And they've continued to do so. And so when this report came out 4 or 5 days ago from Inside Carolina, which we covered immediately within a half an hour of that report coming out, the first thing I said, and I made sure I said it, I made sure it was the first thing I said. I reported, this is a legit report. North Carolina is aiming their direction towards the Southeastern Conference. It is important that this began a couple years ago, at least a couple years ago, before Kevin Gusowich even left office. It's also important to note this, because what was happening at Chapel Hill is happening at UVA, as we have discussed. And now, this is going to be the major part of our monologue, but I just wanted to set the table here before we really get into it. I mean, really get into it. On April 9th, I made a prediction of how I think this is going to go. I made that prediction because I thought it would be nice for you guys to clearly see, if I had to make a prediction, which I did, where I think this is going. It was not a report, right? And when I made my prediction, I said I got about a 1% chance of being absolutely correct, which means I'm not going to be 100% correct. But I thought it was important to make that prediction. And then the most important part about it is explain why I got there. That was more important than the actual prediction. So that's why I did it. So when I predicted North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, and Clemson to the Southeastern Conference, when I predicted that the Southeastern Conference would make the big scoop, the reasons why were more important. The reasons why I believe at that time, and I'm not saying I don't believe it anymore. We'll get into that in the monologue. But the reason I predicted, because we got a lot of people watching this channel for the very first time or for the 5th time, and they don't know what I said. But on April 9th, I believe North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, Clemson to the Southeastern Conference. And the reasons why is because I think the Southeastern Conference, once they do their next move, it's going to be as transformational to the conference as the Texas and Oklahoma pick'em additions were. And I believed that the North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, and Clemson would check all the boxes. It would be the blend that was needed for the Southeastern Conference presidents and ESPN and any other future media partner and or third partner of a private equity, private capital capacity. I also believed in the North Carolina, Virginia, Clemson, Florida State Big Scoop scenario because it's about, now please don't, just relax when I say this because I don't mean it in the way I'm exactly saying it, but the Southeastern Conference is going to do what it needs to do to obtain UNC Chapel Hill. Period. They're going to do all that they can and probably a little bit more. This report that came out 5 days ago, basically it's saying that North Carolina has positioned themselves. They know they're aiming for the SEC. They've hired Belichick. They're doing all this stuff. They got people in position. They're positioning themselves. They know, they believe that the Southeastern Conference has them as the number one target, and the Southeastern Conference has leaked this everywhere. So the Southeastern Conference, it isn't just about what does Southeastern Conference want, and it's not just about what North Carolina wants. It's about how does North Carolina get there. This realignment story is completely different than the USC story. It's completely different than Colorado being at the center of the stage in the Big 12 story. This is completely different than Oregon and Washington. This has all sorts of different variables to it. The biggest one, the most important one, is how does North Carolina leave the ACC to go to the Southeastern Conference? What do you need, North Carolina? And that is the Southeastern Conference is lining it up. They're lining up the different pathways. They're lining up the different scenarios. North Carolina is working towards a Southeastern Conference invitation. While they're gaming out some other options, just in case, Southeastern Conference is lining up different pathways for North Carolina. So the big scoop was not just about the blend for Southeastern Conference to satisfy the presidents, North Carolina, Virginia, and to satisfy current and potential future media partners, to get a couple of the biggest football brands out there, Florida State and Clemson. It was also about making sure that North Carolina can make the move. When we go in our monologue on the Holy Smokes Theater, what North Carolina does not want to do is they do not want to do what Maryland did. They don't have to do what Maryland did. But on the other hand, does North Carolina even need political cover anymore? Has certain interests those with Southeastern Conference interest, have they been so successful in Chapel Hill that they're not even worried about political cover. Maryland went to the Big Ten, and it would have been a lot easier for the Terrapins if they would have had another ACC school go with them. It would have been a lot easier for Maryland to go to the Big Ten with Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech and Virginia, North Carolina, they were not interested. For North Carolina to go from the ACC to the Southeastern Conference, that's why Virginia has always been mentioned as the partner from everybody. Because Virginia gives North Carolina the greatest political coverage inside that institution that they can get. But what if North Carolina doesn't need it anymore? That's the question that has to be asked. And I believe that Scott Hamilton's information on Virginia is not quite accurate. I think it's a little old. That has been, what Scott Hamilton said about Virginia was before the Southeastern Conference and their interest have started moving in on the University of Virginia. Now, maybe, and we'll get into it, that the Southeastern Conference does not need Virginia as a blend anymore to help North Carolina to join the Southeastern Conference. Maybe the Southeastern Conference doesn't even need the big scoop anymore. Maybe the Southeastern Conference North Carolina Clemson blend is enough to satisfy everybody. Maybe the Southeastern Conference is not interested in the big scoop anymore because they're not interested. They don't feel the need to play any defense versus the Big Ten in the battle of the market share. But it starts with the biggest domino piece first, and that is North Carolina. The Southeastern Conference has got big plans. We talk about the college football playoff format. It is very important. It is. Because that is going to grease the skids a little bit, or that's going to grease the skids a lot to further near-term SEC expansion. So that's important. The college football playoff format, what it looks like for 2026, is really important. The new governance, how that works out, is really important. But the Southeastern Conference has huge plans. They're not just thinking 2 years out. They're not just thinking to 2030, 31. They're thinking 10 years from now, 15 years from now. That North Carolina, that Jordan international brand, that's what the Southeastern Conference wants. And by God, they're going to get them. I mean, they are going to get them. In my strongly held opinion. Now, I'm not going to say the door is completely shut. You know the Big Ten wants North Carolina. But there is a reason why the Southeastern Conference has done what they've done for the last 3 years when it comes to Chapel Hill. And again, we started talking about this 2.5 years ago. I was very fortunate to have my nephew, Jacob Gunnarsson. He graduated from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Jacob Gunnarsson, he was I don't know what you call that, a practicing assistant professor at North Carolina, political science. And now he's a professor in Sweden. Gothenburg, something another in Sweden. We had people on the ground floor of this. There was a true battle going on. If you go watch, what is it? Tar Heel Illustrated. Tar Heel Illustrated. THI. I don't know what the gentleman's name is. I don't know what the two guys, but they put on they had a YouTube show on yesterday or the day before. I watched some of it. And they're talking about the internal battles going on at North Carolina. It was published yesterday or the day before. THI. That live show that they did yesterday on THI, that sounded like Peek Around the Corner 2.5 years ago. They talked about everything we talked about. There is an absolute dynamic split in Chapel Hill. You've got the people that want North Carolina to be Southeastern Conference. You've got people that want North Carolina to stay ACC. You've got people that want North Carolina to go Big Ten. Exactly what we talked about. And this gentleman is basically saying, but the Southeastern Conference people, they've got the advantage. They definitely have the advantage. Now, that person wants North Carolina to stay in the ACC, but he basically admits that the report that came out in Inside Carolina, 247. So we are going to go into all that. I got a lot to say about Virginia. I got a lot to say about Florida State. I got a lot to say about Clemson. And I do want to talk about Duke. But I'll keep that until the monologue. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. I don't even know if we should do a roll call because I don't know how much time we have with this station doc that I've got. Case Struthers is in the house. Jose, AMAC, Bruce Harris, MBM. Thanks for coming on in. Flint Dog, 8208. Florida Man, Lego, Gator, Skaven, yes. Daniel Gorby is in the house. Still Austin is here. Don Scruggs, Expedition Greg, Preston from Greensboro, the Big Lubbock. Friends call me Sean. 21 Bucket 21, AMAC is in the house. The Big Lubbock is here. Still Austin is here. Eric Phipps. Good luck, Eric Phipps. Taking the Alabama bar exam. Holy smokes. You're a lot smarter than I am. I tell you that. The Walking Geek is in the house. Alabama would not even admit me into the university. Nobody would, except for St. Cloud State. Who else is here? If I miss you, I apologize. Deadeye is here. Dogs and Dubs is here. Daniel Gygax is here. Rock and Rant is here. Jason Spangler is here. Cranky Tiger, Marcus Meadows, Call Me David, Stephen McNeely, Tumasta, Tuffy Duffy, Anthony Carlson. Yeah, we R.I.P. Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. Charisse Armistead is in the house. Who else is here? Big Ears Bo. Charlie Atwood. Okay. Dante's Inferno Purgatory, Benjamin Griffin, P.S. Wet Blanket, Jason 1. Tough Tony is in the house. Okay, Let me get to some very generous super chats. The Big Gun Shop content. Thank you, Big Gun Shop. I don't know quite what you mean by that. Are you telling me to get to the content quickly, or you're giving me a super chat because you enjoy the content? Big Gun Shop, are you yelling at me, or are you saying, thank you, Greg, here's a super chat? Whichever way it is, that's fine with me. Big Gun Shop, thank you so much for your continued generosity. I very much appreciate it. Kenneth Maynard, the proper blend might be North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, Clemson. 2 basketball, 2 football powers, and UVA, Miami head to the Big Ten. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Kenneth Maynard. Thank you for being a member for 4 months. Thank you, Stephen McNeely, for being a member for 20 months. Both of you are knighted. Cloak and dagger. Cloak and dagger. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your generosity. Big Gun Shop. Appreciate your generosity. Thank you guys so very much. Thank you, Big Gun Shop. Appreciate it. Morris Simmons, let the dominoes fall. Let the dominoes fall. Okay. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit football, and then we get into the Holy Smokes Theater. But we got to talk about some Indiana Hooisers. And I got to tell you guys, I am very big on Indiana. I've got them coming in 4th or 5th, maybe 6th. In large part to do with Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. Mendoza was Superman last year, guys and gals. He was Superman last year. Nothing short but Superman. Now, I'm not picking on California. I'm not, but they got buried last year. Remember, last year was USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington the first year in the Big Ten, and you had Utah and Arizona State, Colorado first year in the Big 12, and California, Stanford first year in the ACC. But California football probably, in my opinion, had a little bit of an exposure issue. Fernando Mendoza was absolutely brilliant. Over 3,000 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 68.7% completion percentage, 144.6 quarterback rating. Now, you're probably looking at that and saying, Greg, that's good. He was good, but that isn't Superman. That is not Superman. Did you watch California Bears offensive line last year? Fernando Mendoza was almost killed last year. What he had to do for the California Bears offense to drive the field was nothing less than heroic. Fernando Mendoza was absolutely brilliant and an emotional leader. His 68.7% completion was, I'm telling you guys, look, I'm trying to come up with an analogy. I'm trying to come up with an analogy. I'm going to say, now this one doesn't make any sense, but then again, you guys, I'm not too bright. It's the only thing that comes to my mind. Fernando Mendoza going from California to Indiana this year is like a guy, when you go to the batter's box, when you played baseball and you go up to the batter's circle and you're swinging a weighted bat. You're swinging a weighted bat, so when you go up in the batter's box, the bat that you use is going to feel so much lighter, right? Do you guys remember that? Right? To me, this is Fernando Mendoza. Last year, He was in the batter's circle, waiting to get up for his time at bat, and he's swinging 3 weighted bats. Playing in this offense, playing in Indiana's offense, he's going to be like, holy smokes. This I can work with. This I can work with. Wet Blanket said he had a donut on the bat. Yes, California was the donut. And it ain't just, okay, let me give you more examples here. Let me explain this a little bit more. And by the end of the spotlight, maybe some of you are going to be like, whoa, maybe Indiana is going to be better than Michigan. Maybe better than Illinois. Because I think there's a very good opportunity Indiana's going to finish in 4th in the Big Ten. Okay. Transfer running back Roman Henby. Okay, he's not a big star running back. In fact, I believe he's going into his 4th year. His production has decreased a little bit every single year. 607 yards rushing, 4.5 yards average rush, 6 rushing touchdowns. Okay. Now, I don't. In the year before, he had 600 and some yards, 4.7, whatever. He's not a superstar. Roman Henby is not a superstar. Sorry, Roman. Sorry, Indiana. But what does Roman do? What does Roman do? He's a fantastic pass receiver out of the backfield. 40 receptions last year from Maryland. 40. That's why Indiana went out and got him. Because this is what Mendoza does. He did not have an offensive line, but he can spot the open, the hot receiver, the tight end, the guy coming out of the backfield. That's what Mendoza can do. So Indiana got Roman Henby, but that's not all. That's not all that they did. They got Lee Beebe. UAB, 884 yards rushing, 5.3 average per rush, 7 rushing touchdowns. But if you watch the highlights, if you go read the scouting report on Lee Beebe from UAB, he is great out of the backfield. He can catch the ball with the best of them. 30 receptions. So they went and got 2 guys out of the portal who can catch the ball out of the backfield for Fernando Mendoza. But that's not all. We talked about California's horrific offensive line last year. Mendoza was like one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks that had the most pressure on him in all of FBS quarterbacks. But yet, remember, even with all that pressure, all those sacks, he completed 68.7% of his passes. Now, what did Indiana do? They got right tackle Khalil Benson, the one good offensive lineman. I'm sorry, Colorado Buffaloes. The one good pass blocking offensive lineman. They got him in the portal. Who else did they get? Do you remember who else Indiana get in a big old portal battle? They got Pat Coogan, the center of Notre Dame, who started for 3 years, who played 1 million snaps, who has a PFF grade that is tremendous. They've got a prime-time center, a prime-time right tackle in the portal to go along with these pass-catching running backs, to go along with Fernando Mendoza, who I'm just going to go ahead and call him Superman this year. And then don't forget their best player last year, Elijah Surratt. This kid is smooth, baby. Smooth. Now I get it. Charisse Armistead, this is a very good point that you made. I think Indiana takes a step down from last year because they lost key plays to the NFL. Curtis Rourke, James West, the defensive tackle, number 5. Absolutely. I agree with you to a certain point. But what they got in the portal and what they got coming back on offense, I think they're going to be able, this offense is going to be, I think Mendoza is better than Curtis Rourke. I'm going to put it out there. And then let's talk about the defense. This is why I think Indiana's coming in 4th or 5th in the Big Ten. I'm going to talk about Mikael Kamara. Now, some Indiana Hoosiers, people in the PATC family are probably yelling at me right now going, why aren't you covering? Why aren't you